wild men amongst us. The radius of the Earth is 3,959 miles. The Earth's surface area is 194.94 million square miles, including dry land in the ocean of the world. 65% of the Earth has not been explored. Life on Earth is relentlessly diverse, and every year brings thousands of new examples. In 2016, science described around 18,000 new plants and animal species. Roughly 3,000 new species of mammals have been discovered in the first decade of the century. Oh, 300. Mostly rodents, marsupials, and beaked whales, and a slew of primates. Researchers recently estimated that the total mammal species count will rise from 5,500 now to 7,500 by mid-century. So why is there so many skeptics still out there who think Bigfoot's a joke? I became a Bigfoot enthusiast when I had my first encounter at the age of 7 outside of Newport, Oregon, on the coast. My grandparents own a cabin there. This was in the 70s. I was a 7-year-old boy who watched the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek, which in 1972 horror docudrama about the Fook monster, aka Bigfoot, type creature that reportedly seemed to be found around Fook, Arkansas since the 1940s. I was staying at my grandparents' cabin for a week in the late fall. There was a big thunder and lightning storm which knocked out the power in the cabin. My grandfather had me go out to the woodshed, which was open-walled shed, and fetch some wood. I remember being scared that night, like something was off. The rain was thrashing down on me, and I made my way to the shed. The shed was only 25 to 30 feet from the house. I made this trip to the woods numerous times in my long 7 years of my life. I had an unusual unease this time, like something was watching me. I started to gather the wood when lightning lit the night sky. I saw a silhouette of a giant creature with red eyes watching me some 10 feet from the shed. I ran back into the cabin and told my grandpa, who called me a wimp and told me to get the wood. I refused, and my grandpa grumbled under his breath and headed out to fetch the wood. A minute or two he returned with a look of fear in his eyes and no wood in his hands, and then he locked the door and grabbed the gun. A few weeks later, they sold their beloved little cabin, and no one spoke of this night again until now. I was never sure of that night. My grandparents' house, at my grandparents' house. Was it an overactive imagination, or did my grandfather and I see something? In the late summer of 1989, my wife and I was taking a trip to the Celeste Indian Reservation, which is not too far from where my grandparents' cabin was. We had the music up and we were enjoying the day, being newlyweds. It was getting close to dawn, and the road was very windy as we came around a corner. A creature about the same height as me, but much more abundant in the chest and shoulders, covered in red hair, was eating berries. I said she because she had sizable black breasts. Her face had human features, and I saw this because the creature turned and stared at me and my wife as we drove by. The third encounter I had there was some children who belonged to friends of mine. They called me in a panic because their parents were gone, and they said they were being watched by two hairy creatures. They lived on the backside of the Sun River, Oregon. They had two dogs, a Rottweiler and a Lab, both large dogs, both males. I asked the kids, where are the dogs? Where are the dogs? They said in the front yard, tied up and curled up crying. I made my way over to their house, not knowing what to think. I found two scared dogs who would not bark at me, and three little children scared as well, and a lot of giant footprints. Believing in Bigfoot is a matter of intuition. Bigfoot believers fit into two categories. Those who think Bigfoot exists and those who think Bigfoot could exist. Throughout history, culture around the world Cultures around the world have told stories of Bigfoot-like creatures. Australian Aborigine lore talks about Yowie. In China, they have the Yeren, and in Himalayas, Yeti or the abominable snowman. Skunk ape is from Florida, and in Mongolia, it's Almas. Grassman from Ohio, and one dingo in Canada, and the org pandemic or pandic in Sumatra, and South America has mapping gory. But most famous is Sasquatch from the Pacific Northwest. The North American Indian tribes had 75 names for Bigfoot before the white man came to their shores. The totem poles of the Pacific Northwest have ape-like creatures on them. Native American Bigfoot legends usually describe the creature as 6 to 9 foot tall, very strong, hairy, uncivilized, and often smelling foul. Generally living in the woods and often foraging at night. Most of the native tribes across North America have stories in their oral traditions. Jane Goodall, who is the world famous ethologist, says, I am always open-minded about Bigfoot because I have heard stories from people who I must believe. November the 8th, 1951, Everest Base Camp, Shipton and Doc Michael Ward found and documented the first set of footprints which started the West love affair for the Yeti. 1792, journalist Jose Maranzo Mozzoni on the Pacific Northwest coast wrote about the Nutuk tribe and a creature by the name of Matlong, which dwelled in the mountains and terrorized the people. 1894, in Canada, the oldest known photograph was taken of Bigfoot. Back in 986 CE, the Viking led by Leif Garrison found themselves on the east coast of North America, which may have led to the oldest account of Bigfoot ever recorded. Erickson and the Vikings reported sighting of a creature that they described as being hairy, horribly ugly, and swarthy, having huge black eyes. Leaf also described this creature as a hairy man having a terrible smell and making loud, piercing shrieks. Suspend for a moment your disbelief of the wild man who lurks just outside your vision, hiding among the firs and the shadows of our world. The story of Bigfoot and the many other names he travels under is after all the story of such fusion between human and animals. It is the story of a creature uncannily close to us, encroaching from the wilderness into our homes. Reports of such creatures like Bigfoot aren't new. They've been around for centuries. William Iron, PhD, who is a Bigfoot believer, explains Bigfoot represents the possibility, the chance that to believe in something, scientifically speaking, could exist. It is about the willful suspension and disbelief, embracing the possibility that something wonderful and mysterious could survive in this world, where everything else has been fact-checked and debunked. So I think you should close your eyes and just for one moment believe.